This is a video that, although recently conceived, I have on a spiritual level wanted to make something like this for a long time. If you've gotten to know me through social media or Discord, a lot of these might seem pretty familiar to you, but since I seem to have something of an audience now, inexplicably, this is a video about things that traumatized me as a child, although more on a media level and not anything particularly serious, because I could go down a longer and much more depressing rabbit hole in that case, but let's keep it a little bit more cheerful and silly. To get one of them out of the way... No! I wasn't spooked by Klasky Chupo, as much as I meme it. I mainly meme it because I was part of the logo community, which is a sentence that I kind of hate saying, but it's true, and everyone there loathed this thing, and understandably so. I mean, it's terrifying. But as a kid, it never really spooked me. Though, as I grow old, I do appreciate that it is pretty uncanny and awful. However, something that was infamous in the logo community that did get me consisted of 3 letters in a blue rectangle. I'll be brutally honest, even as a technical grown adult, I still have a, instinctual panic response whenever I see that starting up a movie or something. There's something about it. I think it's more the beginning than the climax that gets me, because the climax sounds cool, but the beginning's a lot more mysterious and eerie and, well, loud. However, as a kid, this tormented me. I would have nightmares about it, relatives would make fun of me because I used to hide. I even remember one day when we were watching movies in school, I would literally cover both of my ears and shake. And no, even the toned-down text version was too much for me. Camp counselors, teachers, whenever it was a movie, I would seriously get up and check the back of the box, or if it was a movie I knew had it on there, I would literally be so afraid. Sometimes I would straight up tell them, no, don't play it, or whatever. I was a pathetic child. It did, however, fuel my garbage brain obsession with weird intros and startup screens. And on the topic of startup screens... Oh boy. As a stupid idiot 4 to 5-year-old, this happening literally put me into, psychosis level terror. It was a random night and a family friend's son came over to play GameCube, and it was Crash, Team Racing, I believe, or Nitro Kart, the inferior one, and the game froze. So I got up, hit the restart button, and my life was ruined forever. For years, I had literally no idea what triggered it, so I thought it was an RNG thing, and it made me obsessively, compulsively just switch the TV input off whenever I would go to play a GameCube. I know a lot of people were spooked by the PS2 and the red screen of death and all that, but no, I was afraid of squeaky toy sounds and stock child laughter. The only way I could really describe it as a kid was it just felt wrong. Every time I would go to turn on a GameCube, I was afraid it was just gonna randomly happen again. Though, growing up, I later, of course, learned that's what happens when you hold the Z button, and I pretty much make a point to do it every time I play on a GameCube. For real, though, I had nightmares about the GameCube startup just in general, to the point where, once again, hearing the normal startup sound gives me that primitive caveman brain response if I'm, hearing it unattended in the distance or something. It's actually given me more of a response to the original startup sound than it has the Z button version. It's so bad. I was screwed up just so badly by it. Second place honor, though a much more minimal story, is the PS1 Startup, but that's mainly just because it sounds like THX. Honestly, though, I love the PS1 Startup as an adult. I think it's fantastic. However, for a topic more overly specific, I'm about to invent a whole new sentence, so you better buckle up. I used to have these strange recurring nightmares about the Crash 3 face, cutscene screen, except it was Ursula from The Little Mermaid, and she would come out of the screen and attack me, and also her name was just Face. She was like a recurring villain in several dreams I had when I was a child, and the one that finally put her away was this bizarre thing where she entered a mech suit similar to Ed 209, even though I hadn't even known about RoboCop at the time. She had to be pinned down with one of the feet, and I kept throwing a napkin back up at her mech suit, and then she died. I wish I was making any of that up. Want to know what else I wish I was making up? The fact that these stupid internet pranks also made me psychosis-level paranoid. I had a morbid fascination with screamers because I found all the reaction videos funny, but at the same time it also slowly planted this seed in my brain that literally anything I could be looking at any moment will suddenly turn into a JPEG of Reagan McNeil and screech at me with stock screaming sound effects. This got so bad that even when I was watching one of my own cable boxes, I repeat, cable boxes turn on at night, I genuinely thought it was going to be a screamer somehow, which, as an adult, what? On a less playful note, however, there was also something a bit more genuinely devious that made me piss scared of using things as well. It was a fun little program called smed, an old piece of malware from the mid-2000s that had 8 million variants, and most of them would install rogue antiviruses and make your computer act like it was possessed by Pazuzu. I was just so lucky to be browsing shady ROM sites, and then I went to bed, went to school the next day, and when I got off the bus, my dad told me there was something wrong with the computer. Nothing emotionally was able to prepare me for what was gonna happen next. Our old antivirus, Spybot Search and Destroy, if you remember this, you're a crusty old geezer, was straight up unable to remove it, and when we got into the desktop, hell broke loose. There were random web radio shows playing, pop-ups galore. It was, like, insane, and it scarred me hardcore. Because of it, I also developed another obsessive habit of muting whatever computer I was using because I was afraid it was suddenly going to start speaking the words of the devil. However, of course, this was fixed by old reliable reinstalling Windows XP for the 8 trillionth time. But it always lingered and made me weary, and whenever I would go to a cousin's or something that had a virus on their computer, I would go full militant and be like, "Get that off! No, what are you doing? It's not okay!" I once again would argue with some teachers about it, argue with cousins, argue with my own immediate family. I got in a fight with my sisters because they refused to remove a rogue antivirus. It was just chaos. But now, for one of the more serious-ish ones to finally top off this video, the first time I ever went on a roller coaster. And the last. It has been 18 years. Me and my mom and my relatives went to an amusement park that was locally owned and operated, and they basically forced me on a roller coaster even though I was protesting. Surprise, surprise, I didn't like it. I distinctly remember the moment that we got off, I had the widest eyes, the Vietnam veteran tears stare into the distance, and then I just broke down bawling. My mom tried playing it off like, "Oh, you were brave, you finally conquered it." But the damage was done, and for years upon years, any sort of speed or momentum or fast turning that wasn't completely controlled by me basically would instantly throw me into a panic attack. And to be brutally honest, this is something I do still actually deal with. I've been trying to get better, I've been trying to try new things and ride more stuff and whatever, but that completely unconsented roller coaster ride broke me. And I say that it's a bit more of a serious thing because, again, I was a small kid. I genuinely made a point that I didn't want to get on. I was horrified, and they still made me do it anyways. I would like to apologize to all of my high school friends who I bummed out by staying off of rides and waiting until they finished. It wasn't just because I was just a cheap chicken. I genuinely had a deep-seated trauma about that, as silly as it might sound. So that was cathartic? I don't know, I hope you found it interesting, and I just wanted to get this out there because I think you might find these entertaining or maybe even slightly depressing, depending on your point of view. But, yeah, those are things that semi-traumatized me as a kid. Yeah. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go on a car trip. Bye!